Hey, my name is King. Wow, it feels weird saying that. And welcome back to SAOturday, the series where we talk about my favorite anime, Sword Art Online. It has been so long. I got my channel open here. How long has it been? So the last one was, I'll finally talk about Scarezo, SAOturday number 25. And this was how long ago? March 11th, 2023. Oh my gosh. It's been a year and a half. Oh my gosh. Well, just in general, it's been a long time because it's been 10 months since my last video. And if we're really talking about it, it's been like, I don't know. What do we say is like a real video? Would we say that the what I'm watching videos is a real video, or are we going all the way back to the seasonal review? Because that's almost 2 years ago at this point, because that was in January of last year. Oh my gosh. I'll probably address a lot more about this stuff in a separate video, but we're here to talk about my favorite anime, Sword Art Online. And so if you guys remember, the last thing I talked about in Sword Art Online, besides Scarezo, was I talked about the second Moon Cradle book. And I haven't read anything since this. You can still see my notes are in here. I'm trying to find a way to, I guess, simplify this so that way I don't have to worry about like these crinkling up. So I have like highlights and stuff. I don't even know if you can see that, but I've highlighted stuff and I'm trying to do that now, I guess. And by trying to, I mean, I did that like 2 years ago and I haven't touched it since. And I haven't read anything since that. So we have two options that we could go. We continue going with the main series and move on to Unital Ring, the first volume. And this is light novel 21, or we could go to Sword Art Online Progressive number 2. And those are really the two choices that we have to go forward, because I do want to keep talking about the books as I catch up. So let me guys know where you would like to see this go. On top of that, we have it's kind of a good year for SAO because we have something this year. Last year we had Scarezo of Deep Night. The year before we had Progressive. And then, what was it? The year before that, Alicization season 2 or part 2, whatever it's called. That happened. But we're getting Gale Alternative Season 2 this year. And FYI, I was never a big fan of the Gale show. I couldn't finish it. And I know what you're thinking. What? The CEO of SAO couldn't finish Gale Online? No, I couldn't. I don't know what it was. I think it was because the SAO title was on it. And to me, it felt a little different than SAO. Like, I could tell that it was set in Gale. But the tone and the characters, it just felt a little different to me. And I think that's what made it hard. I might have to try to watch it, because I am going to try to watch it again, but when I do, I might have to like put on a fresh pair of eyes and be like, okay, this is just a different show that is a lot like SAO in terms of the world that it's set in, just so I don't go like, oh, this is am I making sense? But anyway, I haven't seen this trailer. Apparently there's a trailer that came out, and so let's see what's going on in here.
ピンクの悪魔の噂。あの女は今でも SAO という狂ったゲームに心をとらわれている。
ガンゲイルオンライン2、10月より放送開始。
All right, and so I guess that's coming out next month or something. Y'all who've watched the channel for a while, I'm not super into anime trailers. It's not really my thing. I find that when I watch an anime trailer, I want like kind of a general plot thing where I know like kind of what to expect. Kind of like a mini movie without spoiling too much. But I feel like anime trailers most of the time are just kind of like a sizzle reel of like the cool moments. And I feel like that's what this was. And I felt like it could have been a lot more impactful if I actually did watch the show. But anywho, we're finally getting a second season for this. They did specify that this is an original work over here at the beginning by, what's his name? Keiichi Sigsawa. And Dengeki Bunko, I don't know why that's in parentheses, but anywho, so this is an original work. This is not something that's based on anything as far as I know. This is something that's just set in the world that I think Reki is kind of involved in some way, just kind of like as a story person. But in terms of like whose idea it was and who's actually actively writing it and telling the story, it's these guys. And apparently the first season came out 6 years ago. We've really shown our priorities there. A1 Pictures. I don't even remember how the first season did. Let me go to my anime list real quick. So Gale Online total had 634,000 members. That's not bad. But its score is kind of a little worrisome. So I know what you're thinking. If you're like an average or regular person, 7 seems like a decent score, but this is my anime list numbers and people don't know how numbers work here. So 7, while it should be a good score, 7 on my anime list usually means like an average score. So this is like a 5.1, essentially, is what people are giving this. Maybe a 6.1 or something like that, but it's in that range where most people seems to have just thought it was okay. And so I hope that the second season gets more of an acclaim or just like pleases more of its target audience than the first season did. But anywho, that's really it in terms of news for SAO. I don't really think that there's anything else major coming out. I do have the main Sword Art Online Twitter account, both of them open. And it looks like they're still doing some game stuff, like the mobile stuff. But other than that, I don't really think that there's much that's happening. So I figured we could just spend this time kind of going through what we usually do towards the end of these episodes, but we would spend a decent amount this time doing it. We would go through the SAO Reddit. Welcome back to r/Sword Art Online. This is where I just kind of clown on the community for being silly while also being like, I love these guys because they're my fellow SAO fans. So starting off, we have my boyfriend and I learned Yu-Gi-Oh! And Kirito a handshake. Why did they like flop around at the end? What was that? Why did he do that? Lifa and Kirito by all these people. Okay, come on. There's not that much. Come on, guys. Does someone have a good SAO tattoo design? I would say Laughing Coffin would be my first one. I just think that's a cool logo. Let's see. So someone said Laughing Coffin. That's what I said. Wind Fleuret, or the Elucidator, Einkrad, Death Gun, Skull Reaper, and the Gleam Eyes, Kirito in a wheelchair. I don't know, bro. I'd probably just do Laughing Coffin or something, but hey, you know. Can we take a moment to process the amount of spiritual pain, emotional pain, and physical pain Kirito endured, and he's only 14 to 17 years old? Well, in the Einkrad arc, he's what? He starts 14 and he ends 16, I think, right? I don't know. I'm fuzzy on my knowledge, kind of. I think, what, another year passes before Alicization happens or something like that. And then he spends 2 years in Alicization. So he's probably, what, 20 at that point? 19 or 20. So he's a bit older than that. But yeah, I mean, especially when you get to Alicization where you can feel an elevated level of pain. Because in Einkrad, you can't really feel physical pain there, only emotional pain. But definitely in the emotional category, and when you get to Alicization, heck, even Ordinal Scale, the physical stuff that he goes through, yeah, definitely. Oh my gosh, I remember just thinking, like, that was something that I was just kind of wowed by Alicization, because I love SAO overall, obviously. That's why we're doing a series about it. But something I noticed when I was watching the show for the first time was that really only the Einkrad arc really fully focused on Kirito. Every other arc had a secondary character that kind of took the spotlight. So in the second arc, it was Suguha. In Gun Gale, it was Sinon. In Mother's Rosario, it was Yuki and Asuna. In Alicization, it was Yu-Gi-Oh! In the first part of War of Underworld, it was Alice. And then you get to the second part of War of Underworld, and it flips back to Kirito. And I remember watching Alicization Core 2, and I was not a fan of that decision because I was really invested in following Alice's journey. And I felt that the second half of War of Underworld really removed that and kind of just made her a plot device, and she wasn't as involved as she was in the first part. And I still stand by that criticism, but something that is there is that they take all of the stuff that Kirito had been going through ever since the Einkrad arc, and including the Einkrad arc that wasn't really the full focus of each season, and then suddenly that's the culmination that builds up to that second half of Alicization, where he's confronting all of that hatred for himself, where he believes that he just has failed everybody and that he doesn't deserve to live, and that everybody else should be alive and he should be dead. That type of stuff, and even like not just like a visual like metaphor of it, which it is, but also just like the full-on visual and physical pain that he was feeling when like he rips open his chest and like tries to pull out his heart. Crazy stuff. But I think Alicization War of Underworld Part 2 definitely made, he was already up there, like I already enjoyed him, but that definitely solidified him as one of my favorite characters in SAO, with that character arc being fulfilled. To debunk the revival item misconception, here's an intentional creative choice of how the anime represents Kirito's will. Okay. That is a really nice visual parallel that I've never even like thought about that. Let's see what people are saying about this. It definitely threw me for a loop on my first couple watches when someone finally explained it to me. Among other things, the anime portrays quite poorly. Everything finally made sense. So you're saying it was better explained in the light novel? Or I'm not sure if I'm understanding that. I'm confused. In the anime, Kayaba didn't use the fighting system, and now that Kirito knows he's GM, he's trying not to fight using the game system and abilities because he knows Kayaba can counter them throughout the whole fight. They're both taking loads of damage, and when Kirito messes up and uses the Eclipse is when it all goes downhill, and that's when Asuna sacrifices herself. And I think that this is a bit overlooked because she's the only one who is cleansed by the paralysis, a paralysis that shouldn't have been cleansed. It makes sense that the yellow particles are a representation of his will to fight, much like Asuna's will to protect. It's why the anime ends the way it did. He did die. He couldn't use his revival item because it had to be used. It's not an automatic effect. Throughout all the shows, it's shown time and time again that the will of the soul affects the game differently, and that's all thanks to how Cardinals is designed. I couldn't tell you any more than that. Honestly, I think the reason Asuna didn't die was because Kirito made Kayaba promise him that Asuna can't kill herself. One line of dialogue being kept in the anime would have told you that Kayaba keeps them both alive. Okay, so it looks like people are kind of talking about this. It looks like we had a little discrepancy here. For me, I've only watched the anime for the first arc. I've read the manga, but I've only watched the anime. I haven't read the light novel for this. And I think for me, I really liked the way it played out because it left a lot open for interpretation. And I was then able to kind of fill in the gaps myself. Like, okay, well, this happened and this happened. And then this happened and this happened. And then this person made this decision. So why did that happen? And so for me, I always took it as, especially when you see that conversation between Kirito and Kayaba after Kirito won the game and everybody's being set free, you see Kayaba essentially admit to the fact that he wanted to create something that tested the human will. He wanted to see if the human will was able to be strong enough to compete with, I don't know, the rules of an artificial world. And you see that theme continue throughout the entire series, mainly in Alicization, where you have the seal of the right eye, where people have to push through with sheer willpower in order to do stuff. Then you have Incarnation, where you can create something purely with your willpower. There's something that Reki loves in exploring the theme of willpower and how that relates to artificial worlds and technology. And I think one of the main themes just overall in the show is the theme that the human spirit is stronger than any artificial world or any piece of technology or any AI that could be created. And then that theme gets developed in Alicization to where now the AI is so advanced that even its own willpower can destroy an artificial world. And then regarding Asuna staying alive, I just figured that was because Kayaba was just kind of honoring the fact that she played a part in his defeat, which won the game. And so he spared her. It was one of those things that I liked was left kind of unanswered because you kind of had to think about it. But I guess in the light novel, he just straight up says that he's going to keep them both alive for some reason. And I don't know if I like that as much. Maybe if I read the light novels, I'd like it. But just hearing that, I do prefer the vagueness of the anime, I guess I would say, because it leaves, like I said, more room for discourse and more room for interpretation for you to kind of figure out what's going on. And I think it becomes deeper that way. I think that's the way that all art should hit us, is by making us think about what the artists are trying to portray. Whether or not we agree with it, what are they trying to say? And I think that the the way the anime ending plays out for me does that. I just started watching the first few episodes and thought they were pretty good, but the time skips that happened to throw me off a bit. Do these time skips happen throughout the series? Because I always think I'm missing something. Yeah. So the first arc of SAO, the Aincrad arc, is really weird in the sense that it does skip around. Like 3 episodes in, they skip what, a month? And then you have an episode that plays out there, and then you skip forward again a few more months, and then after a point you skip forward like a year. It's really interesting that they spend 2 years in the game and it only spends 12 episodes covering that, and they skip a lot, and you spend a lot of time doing side stories. And I believe that the Aincrad arc originally was kind of just written by Reki as a short story type thing. I think he was entering into a festival or something like that, and he really only wrote like the final part of the Aincrad arc, and then it took off, everybody loved it, and then he was like, okay, I guess I'll build off of that, and he kind of worked backwards. He never really had a full-on plan, a full-on developed this is what happens throughout, like this big long kind of like Lord of the Rings appendices of everything that happened in Aincrad. He just saw, okay, this was popular, I guess I'll just tell what happens before that, building up to this point, and move on to another arc after that. And I think a lot of people dislike that choice. I myself kind of do in some ways. I do and I don't. It's weird. And that's what the progressive movies as well as books are attempting to fix, is by giving a really detailed account as to what's happened on each floor and all the adventures there. I personally think that it's not really necessary for every single floor. I think maybe just expanding on certain events, but with it being so in-depth on everything, I think has really hurt that series for me personally. For me, it showed what Reki was really interested in, which was more of the character drama rather than anything else. He wasn't interested in the plot of them racing to the top of the game and beating Kayaba and trying to get out. He's more interested about what does that mean and what does this do to the people. There's like a 5-minute monologue by Asuna in the second to last episode where she's talking about like how she lost her desire to live because of everything that had happened in her life before, and then what happened at the beginning of being an Aincrad, and then she met Kirito and everything changed. And I feel like that's mainly what Aincrad's about, and people miss that because they're so caught up in the time skips. And the time skip, yes, are a bit annoying. But I think if you really try to meet the Aincrad on its own terms, you'll enjoy it more. I don't know. For me, it was an issue, but not really. Like it was it was like a nitpick. I don't know. That's going to do it for the Reddit. We're going to go over to Twitter just to see if anyone's saying anything, and then we'll probably call it there. Sword Art Online isn't actually that bad. People only hate it because at some point it became cool to pretend it's the worst thing ever. I do think that this is true. I think that there's some people who genuinely have problems with the anime, but people being like, it's the worst thing I've ever seen in my entire life. Your odds are they're making that up. Does SAO have some really bad moments? Does it, in my opinion, make some really big mistakes? Yes and yes. And are there some problematic things now, especially the older I've gotten and watching it more over the course of my life? Yes. But there's far worse stuff. And I think overall, I wouldn't say it's anywhere near being bad. I think there are bad points, but overall, I would say that it's good. I don't think people saying it's bad are faking it, but I think people being like, it's the worst anime of all time or something like that, that's kind of blown out of proportion. Itasha Wonderland at San Japan, entry 23, Sword Art Online, Kirito Asuna, okay, blah, blah. I mean, the art's nice. I don't know if I would drive that. No, the Yui one, no! You know, I thought we had survived an episode without Yui, but no, she's had to sneak her way in there. All right, there's really nothing else here, so I think we're gonna call it there. That was fun. It's nice to be back doing it, not only on my channel, but doing a SAOturday. Like I said, I'll probably talk about the long pause and everything that has happened in a separate video, but I just wanted to come back and do a little fun SAOturday. Honestly, it didn't feel right coming back to do anything else other than a SAOturday, so here we are.